Hello! And welcome to the Vandal Factory podcast. My name's Natalie Quatermass.
And I'm Henry Raby.
And together we are Vandal Factory. And if this is your first time listening to the Vandal Factory podcast, welcome, listener.
A very fine, warm welcome to you in your search for podcasts about art and activism.
You found us!
Almost in sync, but not quite.
Henry is a poet and a playwright and a punk and, various things. You can't define him, really.
Mostly things beginning with P.
Yep, only pizza.
Pratt.
Plonker.
Oh.
And I'm a theatre maker and whatnot. And so together we...
Arts facilitator, community
activist. Blah, blah, blah. So here at Vandal Factory, we like to talk all things art and activism. We speak to a whole array of incredible artistic people and support a whole load of causes. Today is no exception.
We've got the incredible Johnny Campbell doing an interview with us, troubadour, folk musician, rambler, artist extraordinaire, and we've also got the occult, non-binary, metalhead comedian Andrew O'Neill. Two people that I hugely, greatly admire. I've seen perform many a time, and they were great chats.
We've been waiting, particularly with the Andrew O'Neill interview. We've been waiting a long time.
Sat on it like a little egg.
Very excitingly, with these two interviews, we love it when a theme arises in the Vandal Factory podcast, and this theme accidentally occurred where Andrew's show is talking about land and housing and hierarchy, and then also Johnny's album launch also has all of those themes, and so these two things coming together couldn't be better.
And yet, as musicians, they couldn't be further apart.
Yeah, very different genres of people.
They meet at the crossroads of the Vandal Factory podcast, where all travellers come to rest their weary feet.
Oh, lovely. Commoners Choir call their imaginary pub of the mind the Hope and Anger. And here on the Vandal Factory podcast, we also like to talk about hope and anger as being the fuels that get us out of bed in the morning and keep you fighting the good fight. So, Henry, how's your hope? How's your anger?
I have been feeling hugely angry.
Yeah, there's a lot to be angry about.
I mean, eyes on Rafa at the moment is that if you're new to the podcast, me and Natalie talk a lot about Palestine over the last few episodes. And right now, while you're listening, bombs are dropping on civilians in Rafah. So we are very angry and we're sort of holding that. So if there's any joy in our voices, it's just a lie. We're just...
All the activists that we are speaking to, marching shoulder to shoulder with every week, there's a dissonance in every breath at the moment. Part of you is grieving and in horror and screaming, and you can have those moments and also then need to go to work, just like the world doesn't make sense, and we're trying to navigate your way through it. I think that's all you can do.
In terms of hope, because I'm making so many beautiful connections at these demonstrations we're attending every Saturday and online and artists across the world. I put someone on X the other day that was like, artists that are speaking out and standing about this and not being silent, I see you. I'm getting ironclad respect for people that are being vocal about this atrocity that's happening.
And the silence and those people not turning up.
And what I wanted to reflect on is there's weirdly lots of photos where I'm quite smiley on these demonstrations, and sometimes I go, oh my goodness, am I treating them as a bit of a beano where I get to be noisy in the street? But I think there is so much camaraderie and specialness about coming together that there are moments where you feel that joy and wonder and that hope. The hope. It's the hope that kills you, though. I mean, the bombs as well. They're killing people as well.
Yeah.
How about you, Natalie? How's your hope/anger?
Hope is... I think it was on the last episode, wasn't it, that Mark Thomas referred to hope not being really a thing that's on the West Bank, but resilience is there. And I think that's certainly where I'm at these days, that I don't really believe that our life is going to amount to much. I really don't. I'm like laughing about it because if you didn't laugh, you'd cry, and that's not great podcasting. But
check out the Vinyl Factory podcast. They just cry for 20 minutes and then they play a pre-recorded interview.
They wanted to be authentic, so they just played themselves in the fetal position, crying. But we will get through it somehow. You know, you will continue putting one foot in front of the other, and the sort of hopelessness doesn't make me feel hedonistic. We're not in that stage. We're in if we're stuck on this ship and it's sinking, we might as well have a parade. We are going to keep doing what you believe in. You're going to go, and I'm going to go down fighting for what I believe in. And that's how I feel at the moment.
Excellent.
That even if it amounts to nothing, even if it's pointless, well, I'm still going to do it.
Yeah.
So
and on that note, like, there's been some rumblings just in the last 24 hours about funding and about Arts Council and about reputations, and we're trying to unpack that. So I feel we don't want to say too much because there's so much conversation zipping back and forth.
But for anyone who has no idea what that is about, just give them a brief summarization, even though.
So Arts Council England are funders for artistic organisations and individuals across England, and they changed their relationship status to a relationship framework, which is like your reputation of like what's at risk. So I suppose examples are if you have a member of your staff that is involved in some illegal wrongdoings, would be controversial to keep funding an organisation that hasn't addressed this. Or, for example, you just keep getting really bad reviews and therefore there's a question of quality and how can the Arts Council continue to fund something with that reputation. But it updated it to include individuals who work for the organisation's political beliefs and activism, going out and doing your political individual beliefs in the world could impact the organisation you work for, and therefore that could impact the funding. And so a lot of people were really outraged and angry that this is a form of censorship and it's coming down on people, and clearly about recent things that are happening with Palestine.
The Arts Council are a branch of the government. They are our central funders.
Funder,
So essentially you have the state saying, oh, now steady, don't go and do anything too controversial now because we won't be funding you if we deem you as having a reputational risk because of your activism. And
we sort of want to challenge what that means when you say controversial, because we don't think that saying that the criticism of the Israeli state and its attacks on civilians in Gaza is controversial to stand on a platform and say we denounce this. Though the Arts Council have put out a statement in response, and they say they are still very much in support of free speech. Again, this does feel so much on Palestine when they put out a huge list of reasons why you should support Ukraine and why you should engage in certain levels of boycott against Russia and Belarus. And so why is it one wing of the state says we encourage this is good, this is fine to stand in solidarity with Ukraine, and yet when this feels completely a sort of low level thing of like just be careful with those Palestinian flags, and as artists, we need to speak truth to power, and speak it we will.
So, with this in mind, me and Henry have a much overdue conversation that we need to have with you, gorgeous listeners, which is we've done this for nearly 2 years now, over 2 years. There's a fair amount of content and we want to do it more. Like, our hearts are in these conversations we're having, championing artists, and to do that, we'd at least like to cover our own expenses, and unfortunately nothing in this world is free, and therefore, we're unlikely to get any Arts Council funding.
Not anytime soon.
So our options for kind of public funding are fairly narrow because of the nature of our show. Therefore, we just prefer it if you could fund us, and we should probably set up a Patreon page. So keep that in mind. Keep your eyes and ears watching. We've got to do some admin first, boo. But in the next sort of month or so, I think we're going to aim to have a Patreon page. So if you've got a quid and you can give it to us, that would be brilliant, and that'll help us to keep championing all the artists and all the causes that we do here on Vandal Factory Podcast.
You can find us on Instagram, you can find us on Facebook, and you can find us on X, formerly Twitter, and we'll be announcing how we're going to make this thing work.
Without further ado, we don't want to talk about money anymore, do we?
That's done. Let's talk about riffs. How do you feel about riffs?
Bangers.
Yeah. So we are recording this at Chapel FM Art Centre in Seacroft, and this is here where I first met Cerys from Ómoia, and they are this really cool alternative grungy rock band, punk band that are blitzing through Leeds and making a lot of cool noise, and Cerys very kindly sent us a little bit of audio to introduce a track from their new EP. So I think we're just going to have a little bit of a banger.
Hi everyone, this is Cerys from Ómoia, and I am here to introduce our brand new single, The Sickness, featuring Emma Marks and Breathe and Blow from our debut EP, The Sickness, which is out February 9th. So this song is very important to all of us because it's the first song we've ever written as a band, and it's all about mental health awareness, and my struggles with the addiction of the illness inside of my mind. But there is hope to finally relieve that self-doubt, all of that self-deprecation. So this is The Sickness. Please enjoy, guys. Please keep streaming, and hopefully see you soon at all of our live gigs. Thank you.
Suffered limbs to dislocate. Sleepless nights I lay and I wonder, this isn't me, this isn't me. Who am I? And I'm addicted family.
Lovely stuff. Thank you so much, Cerys, for giving us a voice note and playing a lovely banger for us.
So we thought this would be perfect to lead into our conversation with Andrew O'Neill. They're an occult comedian, and, well, we've been going to see them for over a decade now.
Absolutely one of my favourite comedians who never fails to make me laugh. Yeah. And I loved this show so much.
The show's called Geburah.
I was avoiding that, but go ahead.
And it's also, Andrew is an anarchist, and it's hugely political. I mean, they're going to describe the show here, but like, I think people go, I don't like politics in comedy. I just want to laugh. Like, well, I'm doing both, right? I'm like absolutely in stitches at this surreal, bizarre, bat strange comedy that Andrew does. At the same time, I'm like, at the end of it, like, I'm standing up and I'm ready and I'm like, where's the revolution? Yeah. Come on, everyone, let's laugh and start fires.
We should also put the caveat in this chat that we'd had a few jars during this gig.
Oh dear.
And so would Andrew, as you'll definitely hear. So get into the vibe of like, you've been to see some revolutionary comedy, you're having a great time, there's lots of Gen Z goths around, and
way past their bedtime.
Yeah, and it's all just everyone having a lovely time. Here's the chat with Andrew O'Neill.
Well, I first met you when you were supporting the Men Will Not Be Blamed for Nothing. Right?
Yeah, with one of Sherrington's gigs over in York. Because they were like, who do we get to support a steampunk band? Well, I guess some like scrawny nerd punk poet. That's the only answer to that.
That is correct, because all other steampunk bands are shit. So bear in mind, I was in the only good steampunk band that's ever existed.
Smoky Bastard were pretty good.
Smoky Bastard. How are you?
So I'm very well, thank you. I live in Leeds now. Used to live in York, and me and Natalie are a theatre company called Vandal Factory, and we do a podcast about art and activism.
And just before the pandemic hit, we were making a show that was, for our Bible was. What's it called?
Who Owns England?
Who Owns England? By Guy Shrubsole. And so I grasped Henry's hand when you mentioned it, and I went, oh! And essentially everything we were working towards was like with 4 actors and musicians, and Henry was writing it, I was directing it. We had like, it was gonna be this big thing. COVID happened, and none of it happened. And you've done it far better, far faster, far funnier. You said everything we wanted to say. Better.
I can only apologise.
You picked up
the thing is, right? Here's the thing, right? This issue of the housing crisis, it's a fucking scam, right? Oh, we need to put your energy prices up because of the war in Ukraine. Oh, do you? Is that because you're not making money? No. The gas companies are making more money than ever. So why do you have to put our prices up? Because the war in Ukraine means we can't get gas from Russia, right? So does that mean that you're making less profit? No. And that's the thing. That's why I talk about the storyteller class, right? Because it's a fucking lie. Now, I learned a really, really valuable lesson really early on. I used to work for Mambo, the Australian surf leisure brand, right? And because a mate of mine when I was at university, I was in the hardcore.
I had no idea you were going to start talking about Australian leisure brands. This is a curveball.
When I was at university, the University of North London. Don't look for it; it's not there anymore. When I was at the university, this short-lived University of North London, I was in a hardcore band. And I was really involved in the hardcore scene. And a mate of mine, a Greek friend of mine, Sophia, worked for Mambo. And she's like, I can get you a job. So I got this job in a shop. We had this lecture in this shop in Carnaby Street by a cop. And he's like, okay, right, so going to tell you guys that we're going to talk about shoplifting. Do you realise that every time someone shoplifts, that comes out of your pocket? And I was like, no, it doesn't. He's like, yeah, because So they call it shrinkage, but every business that gets shoplifted from, they have to account for that, and that actually comes out of your wages. And I was like, no, it doesn't, because the way capitalism works is, I get paid the minimum they can get away with, and they charge the most they can get away with, and that's economics. That is elasticity or inelasticity of demand. I learned this at GCSE, right? They literally, and it's that thing of like when the gas companies go, gas costs more, so we have to charge you more. No, gas costs more, so you make less profit. So you don't have to charge us more. You're making so much profit, and bear in mind, profit, for those at home, profit isn't what the company costs to run. Profit is what is in excess of what the company costs to run. So they go, no, we have to charge you more because of the war in Ukraine. It's a lie. It's just 100% a lie. We're all paying more on our bills because the energy companies went, cool, we can pretend that Ukraine means, like, it's like an exact lie. What we need to do is we need to tell everyone you can tap out. So a really good thing would be, for example, we're supporting this venue, and venues are important, but also if we could find somewhere we could go where we could have off-license beers, if we could do it the punk way, if we could do everything that we can do, let's try and find ways we can do everything the punk way. Let's do everything the cheap way. And how can we support each other? Like, for example, touring bands should never have to pay for hotels. There should be a network of, we should have a network of fucking floors that we can all sleep on, right? Comedy, you don't want most comedians staying with you. They're mainly pricks. They're not, actually, that's not entirely true. Russell Brand is an outlier. But, yeah, topical. But, wouldn't it be much better if, and I run gigs in Oxford, I'm like stay on my floor. Like, no act will ever need to buy a hotel. We need to create communities that insulate ourselves from the capitalist infliction of the dog-eat-dog mentality. Right? That's a fucking sentence. And if you could email that sentence to me, I'm very pleased with it.
Andrew, when you talk about this on stage, do you find people are nodding along, they get it, or do you think this is people are like their brains are going, boom?
No. It's not like, okay, so my last show was about anti-consumerism, right? It made it very hard to sell merch. But that show felt like a sell. I had to say to them, I'm shit at this, it's okay, let's basically stop 90% of industry for the next 10 years because we don't need to make any more clothes, we don't need to make any more cups, we don't need to make any more phones, we don't need to make any more of these things. We can stop 90%. We need to make food and medicine and schools and hospitals, and we need to, we could stop, we could fix the climate in 10 years if we just stop making shit we don't need. But this show, I go, landlords are cunts. No, landlords are unnecessary. And the people I stay with in Edinburgh have another house and they're landlords. But I didn't do a thing today. There's a bit in the show that I usually do, which is, remember this phrase. Market rate is an anagram of you are a cunt, mate. But my friends, the flat that they own, they rent it out way below market rate. Now if everyone that owns property put it out at lower, and if I ever make real money, what I'm going to do is buy loads of property and rent it out at destructively low rate, right?
Is that with you like a land? It's like another word. It's like a land. Not lord, because you're not a lord. You're like something else.
A land sharer.
Yeah,
right.
A land angel.
But the commodification of survival needs to be socially unacceptable, and that's that thing about telling a new story of we need to start going. You're a landlord. Well, what's wrong with you? What? I got a new property. Well, then what? Why are you doing that? Like, find another way to earn money. I've been reading a lot of my so I did a film studies degree, and I've been rereading a lot of my film theory stuff recently, mainly to argue against people who think the Barbie movie is brilliant, because it's
I've not seen it yet.
as an anti-capitalist. As an anti-capitalist, I simply cannot accept that Barbie movie is brilliant. Anyway, that's fine. I'm a formalist more than anything else, and my biggest excitement in life is finding new ways to be funny. So there's a big bit at the end of the first half of the show that we're not going to give away, and I've never done anything like that before. And I love it, and I'm so excited by it. And when I first came up, can you imagine when I first came up with that, how that felt? Like, fuck, right? So there's that, right? There's also, I've been working towards, I love weird comedy, and I love surrealism, and I love non sequiturs, and I love Monty Python, and I love Harry Hill, and I love the Mighty Boosh, although the Mighty Boosh came to the scene after I started stand-up. And I love surrealism, and I love experiments with form, and I love, more than anything else in life, finding a way to be funny that no one else has done. I love that. I love it so much. And I also love club comedy, and I love doing that stuff to people who are not comedy literate. Some of them never been to comedy before, and they're a Saturday night out, and I love doing that. I love working out how to sell that to mainstream people, right? But also, I am an anarchist, and I've been an anarchist for my entire adult life, and I've yet to have anyone dissuade me from that. And anarchism is really, really, really hard to sell as a stand-up, because everyone's left, right, everyone's Tory, Labour, everyone's like, with us or you're against us. And to be able to talk about very anarchist ideas in a way that makes people go, well, yeah, like it's already, yeah, well, of course. And then basically, and the housing crisis is the best way to do it. And if you rent, you know you're being fucked over, and you know it's not right, and the government are never going to do anything about it. So to be able to do a stand-up show that's consistently funny, there's no bit in the show that dropped the funny for too long tonight, you know. And in the early days of forming the show, there were bits where people go, you know. And that's that thing about finding who I am as a comedian.
Andrew, is there a song you'd like us to play on our podcast that would get everyone vibed up? Maybe something that's inspired you when writing the show, or something you're listening to, or even some of your own music?
Anything by a Meebix song in which he goes, "Get off your knees!" And that is written on my show notes.
Worship stage, heard a new manifesto. It's all questions, no solutions at all. We're out on your own now. Who's up in? Look at your friends. Bring the surface to daylight. Strength will flow through you there. In our midst, and when we rise, we will be betrayed. They are the wolves in sheep's clothing. Take your place at the back of the flock. Always talk about freedom. We'll be tainted with blood. It's your life. Put this cross on your back, child. To the long weary trail, to the top of the hill. Get off your knees.
Get off your knees.
Yes.
Come on.
Doesn't
Crack on.
quite have the same ring to it as Annex. And that was Andrew O'Neill. Thank you so much to Andrew for speaking to us.
Yeah, it was great. In the background, you might have heard a couple of other voices. When we were at Andrew's gig, we bumped into George and Bunty, who
We made some new friends.
We made some new friends in our 30s. Can you imagine? Called they run a zine called Wait, which is HWAET zine, which is all about folk tales and folklore and the sort of dark, twisted, punky side to it. And they did
make
some
incredible artwork
Yeah.
and had designed Andrew's poster.
Yeah, tour poster. And they've worked with our guest that's coming up in a little bit, Johnny Campbell. They did some artwork for a festival that Johnny puts on. So, yeah, we want to give them a little shout out.
And in future, we will definitely do a future podcast with them where we're going to go on a walk and they can teach us about
Stones.
the land and ancient stones and
Ley
tales
lines,
that are
I see,
connected
yeah.
to these, to our land. So, yeah, please get in touch, Bunty and George.
Land, eh? They're not making any more of it. We've talked about land a little bit on a previous episode about rambling and trespassing. As you sort of heard, we were making a theatre show about land rights, so it bubbles in our heads. Natalie is caressing her copy of a Guy Shrubsole book.
Can you hear it? I got this for Christmas and it's still got... It's a real book in the studio, listeners, and it's still got that new book smell. And I haven't read it yet, but please check out Guy Shrubsole and know that that is his real name, Shrubsole, and he talks about land and nature. But his latest book is called The Lost Rainforests of Britain, and it is a thing of beauty. I just wanted to read out a little bit of what's on the back. Temperate rainforests may once have covered up 1/5 of Britain, inspiring Celtic druids, Welsh wizards, romantic poets, and Arthur Conan Doyle's most loved creations. Oh, only fragments now remain. They are home to a dazzling variety of luminous life forms. So land connects all of these political, social justice issues, such as, we mentioned Palestine before. That's about land. Environmental justice is about land. Hierarchy and who owns property and housing and who has the right to have a safe space. And also who has the right to take up space in streets. And are the funders of your workplace going to take away that right because you are taking up the wrong kind of space in the wrong kind of land? So these land, although it's a thing that we walk on every single day, it is infinitely political. And if this is a new topic for you, then I just start with Who Owns England by Guy Shrubsole. It is a Bible of knowledge and wisdom, and yeah, what a book.
Everything comes down to land. It comes down to how big a family you're able to have. It comes down to how much exercise you can have. It comes down to what food you're eating. It comes down to how much fresh air you get. It comes down to what freedom of space you're allowed.
Your body is allowed in.
Yeah, and so much of England is roped off and not accessible to us. It is just owned by
the king.
By the king!
It is owned by the king, and
Yeah.
we should take it off him.
Yeah. Controversial!
Oh, don't be too controversial.
But seriously,
Henry.
we need to take the land from the king.
Yeah.
And someone that has been talking a lot about land is our next guest interviewer that we chatted to, which is Johnny Campbell.
Oh, Johnny Campbell.
So I've had the pleasure of gigging with Johnny a couple of times in what's great about Johnny is he's a folk musician, but he fits into punk spaces because it's really politicised when he sings about trespass and land rights, but also fits into folk shows where it's very traditional. And he's going to talk about his new album, True North.
We can also tell you, listeners, that we have a very exciting news because we've got a code that Johnny has given us. So if you listen to the Vandal Factory podcast, you will actually get 10% off not just Johnny's latest album, but all of Johnny's merchandise. And that code is...
Sale 10.
That code is...
Capital S, capital A, capital L, capital E, 10.
One more time. So please go and support Johnny and get a lovely Vandal Raptor discount. Here's Johnny.
Welcome to the Vandal Factory podcast, Johnny Campbell. So we're recording this on the 2nd of January, and I believe to celebrate the new year, you went for a ramble up a hill. How did you see in 2024?
Yeah, the same as any other kind of last few years. Just go for a New Year's Day walk, this time near York, and quite nice not to wake up on it with a hangover on a New Year's Day. And that's the way I've done it for the last few years, so it's good.
Yeah, so have we. The last couple of years, we've tried to get out to the coast. So we were in Filey on a beautiful beach, clear skies, and yeah, it's in the last couple of years that I feel like I've grown up a little bit, because I care more about the next day being nice than I do the night before, which it was definitely like a signifier of, oh, I've gone into my 30s now.
Strong millennial vibes here.
Yeah.
Have you always been someone that enjoys the ramble up a hill? I know we're going to talk about that as a key theme of your folk music, or is that something you discovered sort of more recently as you were drawn towards the music?
It's something that I think many Yorkshire folk will get taken up a hill in their I suppose like pre-teens or early teens by their parents, something like that. And it's one of those things that you either you love it or you hate it, kind of thing. It's and for me, it's something that I enjoyed, and it's something that I've been doing for like 25 years, something like that. So, and it's only just kind of recently really trying to combine the two of what I call like the work-hike balance, which is trying to combine music and walking at the same time. So
I like that. I like that very much. So at what point did you start discovering the politics that are related to going for that walk?
With the solo stuff that I'm doing, it's always been linked with the landscape, with nature, and radical politics. It's been a bit more like in the past, perhaps a bit more like overt, which is just more about like, I suppose, like political structures, which is a bit more kind of obvious. But especially with things like the Right to Roam campaign over the last few years, and just what I'm trying to do is like link back the perhaps like past trespassers or past pieces of radical history from the last 200 years, and use that as kind of like a lens to kind of shine on what's happening today. So it would be quite. I don't like to try and like pick out particularly, I suppose, like traditional songs or events that don't really have any relevance today. It's got to have like a lens on what's happening today and to make it relevant. So that's what I try and do with what I'm doing musically across places like Sweden, Norway, Estonia, Finland, Scotland. They have something that's called broadly known as the Right to Roam, and across most of Europe they will have something very similar. And a sharp contrast to what we've got here in Scotland, they have a pretty much 100% right to roam across the whole of the country, which they've had for 20 years now. And it means that you are able to access land recreationally, to camp, to walk, to cycle. You just can't go into people's gardens or on cultivated land. The difference here is that 92% of England is completely off bounds. Only 8% of England is available for access, and that's only been the case since the early 2000s. But within that 8%, you're not allowed to like wild camp, cycle, horse ride, all the things that you are able to actually do within Scotland. The reasons for this go back a millennia, right back to William the Conqueror, and the more recent of the last 200, 300 years of the enclosures. And this is just a stark contrast to what they have in Scotland, and the idea that we had the lockdown a few years ago, but in reality, England has been in lockdown for the past few centuries.
Yeah, absolutely. And with even how much it is ingrained in us, even though I've known about this for years and years, and I've read Guy Shrub's Soul. Read George Monbiot. Like, I know this, but it's still deeply ingrained in there. So I was in Scotland not so long ago in October, and my brother is Scottish and lives up there, and I was looking at a particular patch of like forest area, and I was going, are we allowed in there? That might be a good place to let the dog off the lead. And he was like, of course we are. And then went, you're in Scotland, remember? You've got the right to roam. And I was like, oh yeah. Like it just hadn't sunk in. And then he was also telling me that, interestingly, it's whoever owns that land, it's their responsibility to make sure you have a safe passage through it.
Yeah.
So it's sort of flipping the responsibility of whoever owns it to make sure that there's a gate and a pathway through, and that the animals, however it's being used, is done with people in harmony with whoever else might want to pass through it or whatever.
Yeah, it's essentially all the difference is that in Scotland, if you own a piece of land, you can't forbid people to access it. The difference is in England, that's the contrast. If you look on an English map, you'll see like shaded areas which are kind of like shaded in orange, which means you are able to kind of walk freely off the path there. You don't actually have them on Scottish maps. And for a long time, I kind of looked at Scottish maps and thought, there's no public footpaths on here. There's nowhere where I can walk. So I didn't actually know about the right to roam in Scotland, even though they had it for quite a while. And then, so yeah, when we're talking about it being ingrained, yeah, it was very much in my mind, but it was kind of flipped on that kind of thing. I still come across a lot of people when I'm doing gigs that people don't know about it or don't even recognize it.
And it's something that's completely normalized, right? That if people just get used to not having something, which happens like across all areas of our lives, sadly, I think there'll be a generation that are not used to having an NHS that worked really well, and that they just get used to that and therefore think it's outrageous to demand it.
Like student fees or anything like that. Yeah. It's just all it takes is just a couple of decades or even a generation for it to pass, and people think that it was a ludicrous idea or it was totally unimaginable. But no, it's these things are within our lifetime.
But Johnny, you're part of a tradition of the troubadour spirit, this idea of rambling, dare I say, trespassing, that comes with folk music, of creating sounds that are about our cultural heritage, but also about travel and moving. And is that a core theme of this new album, True North, which is taking the past and saying we can draw from it and move forward, and we can be naughty with our landscapes?
Naughty with our landscapes.
Well, I've still yet to come across like a PR friendly version of how to describe the album, and I've not come across it yet. But basically, the album is recording traditional songs of each Northern English county on or around their respective county high point. If you can manage to find a way of saying that within 10 words, let me know. But
so you've literally recorded them.
Being naughty with the landscape. That'll do.
So you literally recorded them on the highest point of each county, or they're inspired by those points?
No, recorded them on and around the highest points of each county. Each of the songs is a traditional song of each county, and the idea is to kind of create this, I suppose, like psycho-geographical kind of tapestry of the North with the songs. So each song will kind of tackle a particular theme. So, for example, the song that I recorded on Green Hill Gregoreth, which is Lancashire's highest point, is a song called For Loom Weaver, which is about people who were working in the loom weaving industry in 1819, 1820, who were losing their jobs to steam-powered machines at that point.
I'm a full loom weaver, as anyone knows. I've knelt to it and I've worn out my clothes. Me clogs are both broken and stockings I've none. You'd scarce give us tuppence for out I've got on. Old Billy at band kept telling me long we might have better times if I'd nobbut held me tongue. I've held me tongue till I've near lost me breath, and I feel in me heart I'll soon clem to death.
How the landscape influences the people itself. So, for example, the Pennines, where the water runs down the hills, providing the power to mills that powered the transatlantic slave trade and made a lot of people incredibly wealthy. But because of that created things like the unions. It created the industry that surrounds that, created the chartists and things like that, and that's synonymous with the Northern identity. And it's kind of like exploring the how does the landscape influence the people itself. That's a detailed song. Some of the other songs are less kind of detailed in that, but I've written a zine to go with the album that goes into the kind of like the links much further.
Providing a zine with an album is like when we used to get CDs and have like proper artwork and the lyrics and everything. We're kind of going backwards again, aren't we, to wanting I don't know, something tangible to go with it, and
a bit of homework.
Yeah, like my homework to go with my albums.
Yeah, I'll be doing tour in March. I can't remember how many dates, maybe something like 15. 15 days, something like that, across Wales, Scotland, mostly in England. And a lot of the tour is very fresh for me. It's kind of pushing it into like a bit of like a different kind of like stage of what I'm doing. Previously, what I'd done is like majority of ticketed shows and some free entry shows, but everything on here is a ticketed show, and it'll be across like a few gigs in London. There's Blythe, Whitby.
Maybe we should go and try and walk up everything. I want to listen to the song in the place. How many songs is there? 12?
There's 8 songs.
8 songs, 8 days out for me and you, Henry.
Nice.
We're going to go for a little walk.
Well, I want Johnny to come with us, and so I don't want to put my headphones in and listen to a little song. Can you just...
Days out for me, you and Johnny.
Unless you're like, I'm sick of going up there. How did you have to get it in one take when you went up these? As not one take, or did you visit them multiple times and do multiple recordings?
Initially, my idea was to just do it in 3 takes because it's a field recording, like outdoor recording. I want to try and keep it as authentic as possible with some wind, with some with anything else in there. There's a lot of people out there who will do field recordings that just sound exactly like the studio, and I think that's kind of defeating the object.
I want to hear the landscape that you're talking about or singing about.
Yeah, and what I did is I did the last song in September, which was recorded the video at the same time, which the video's on YouTube. It's the first single that come out called "Here's the Tender Coming."
Pressing all the men, oh dear, what shall we do? Here's the tender coming off at Shields Bar. Here's the tender coming full of men. Oh, hide thee, canny Geordie, hide thyself away. Hide till the tender makes for Trurridge Bay. If they tack thee, Geordie, who's to win our bread? Little Jackie, better off be dead. the tender coming stealing off me dear. Oh dear, he ship you out of here. They will ship you foreign, that is what it means. Is the tender coming full of red marines.
That was recorded video and audio at exactly the same time, which is really hard to do outdoors because you need the perfect take for the video, perfect take for the audio, and the perfect take for just the performance all at the same time. But after that recording, which was just so fantastic, it was better than any of the other recordings for the album. I had like about a month and a half to have the deadline for everything, and I decided to re-record half the album within a month because that recording was just so good that I had to go back to the locations and back to record.
So yeah,
That's a nice experience.
Yeah, it's interesting with the people who turn up to the shows, and I often get people coming to gigs and not even talking about the music, but they just want to have a chat at the merch table about a closed off bridleway at the end of the lane. That really does happen.
Yeah.
Is there a particular song that you've been enjoying lately, or an artist or an influence that you'd like us to play on the podcast?
Yeah, if there's possibility of any Pogues song, as we know, like it was Shane MacGowan's passing at the end of November, and he was a massive influence on my music. And we've had a lot of people like musicians pass away in the last few years, but none has touched myself more than Shane MacGowan. So if your audience doesn't mind swearing, The Sickbed of Cuchulainn.
McCormick and Richard Tauber are singing by the bed. There's a glass of punch below your feet and an angel at your head. There's devils on each side of you with bottles in their hand. You need one more drop of poison and you'll dream of foreign lands. When you pissed yourself in Frankfurt and got sipped down in Cologne, and you heard the rattling death trains as you lay there all alone. Frank Ryan bought you whiskey in a brothel in Madrid, and you take some fucking black shirt who was cursing all the yids. And a sickbed of Cuchulainn will kneel and say a prayer, but it goes rattling at the door and the devil's in that chair. The Euston Tavern, you screamed it was your shout, but I wouldn't give you service, so you kicked the windows out. They took you out into the street, kicked you in the brains, so you walked back then through a bolted door and did it all again. And a sickbed of Cuchulainn will kneel and say a prayer, and the ghosts are rattling at the door and the devil's in that chair. Remember that foul evening when you heard the banshees howl? There was lazy, drunken bastards singing Billy in the Bowl. They took you up to midnight mass and left you in the lurch. So you dropped a button in the plate and spewed up in the church. Now you sing a song of liberty for blacks and packs of jocks, and I'll take you from this dump you're in and stick you in a box. Then I'll take you to Geburah and shove you in the ground, where you stick your head back out and shout, we'll have another round. At the graveside of Cuchulainn, we'll kneel around and cry, and God is in his heaven, and Billy's down by the bay. Yeah!
Lovely stuff. We were actually listening to Johnny's album True North while we were making placards, which was quite a fun little experience of like, oh, rambling and big rams, and I'm a working man, paint, cut, there's a placard.
Those placards were for the Artists and Culture Workers block that Henry and I set up for the first time on the 10th of Feb. And if you don't know, a block is any group of people that decide to march together.
I would add that if you are an artist, you're a poet, and you're like, I want to spread the word, I want to raise awareness, I want to write a song, I want to put on a play, and you say this is about Palestine, you'll get a very specific audience. If you make a beautiful, powerful placard, if you create a song and you march through the city centre of Leeds or wherever you live, you will get a much wider audience that you are throwing this message at them and provoking and starting a conversation as they get their phones out to record this spectacle that marches past.
And
so if you think about audience, that's where your audience is.
And it's the old saying, that's you doing it as an individual, but come together and what do we become? We also wanted to do it because we wanted, it's artists that are being targeted.
Yeah.
Artists are being silenced in Palestine, and so are journalists, so are storytellers. Every Palestinian has to become a storyteller just through existing. They have to scream their stories at the world in order to try and be heard. So it's showing that I see you, and I am physically going to come out to the streets and demonstrate that I see you.
If you want to hear more from the storytellers, Palestinian storytellers, we've put out big special podcasts on Palestine where people say in their own words what their art is. We play music, we play poetry. And in terms of this last Watermelon March, we've got vox pops from the artists, and we've got Commoners Choir singing, and we've got chants from the march, and that's all as a separate mini podcast, Factory Floor Cut. So please check that out wherever you're listening to your podcasts.
Yeah, so Henry just dropped in there that this was the Watermelon March. You might be thinking, why? What on earth does that mean? Well, when we went to that London, which was also on the last podcast, we were, taken by the spectacle of being in a London protest and how colourful and vibrant. And on our way back in the coach, we started chatting about, well, how can we bring an element of that back to Leeds? If we're not going to do it as theatre makers and poets and bring a little bit of vibrancy to the usual marches, then who is? Particularly as it keeps going on, we start thinking, how can we tell this story? And because every protest you are telling a story, how can we tell this story differently that keeps people interested, that maybe engages with a different audience? And so we came up with the idea of having a themed march that was themed on the watermelon, and I worked with 3 gorgeous children to tell the story of the watermelon and why it's a symbol of Palestine. We had the Commoners Choir come and sing and teach the crowd a round of Ceasefire Now, their latest song. And everyone really got into it and were wearing watermelon hoods and placards. And we had 2 huge inflatable watermelons and there was all sorts going on. So we hope that might have caught someone's eye. A usual shopper might, rather than just dismiss an angry mob and be like, oh yeah, that's that thing that people do in Leeds now, they might go, why are they carrying a watermelon? And Google and find out a little bit of this Palestinian history. But
it's a shame that nothing rhymes with melon, isn't it? Other than
felon.
But Joe Biden, you're a felon. We stand by the watermelon.
Yeah, or in our thousands, in our melons, we are all Palestinians. Doesn't roll. Yeah. Although I made a like a sandwich board that had every child is one in a melon, and then they had the picture of the melon, and that was worn around. It had not a target on the back. Yeah. That was one.
I saw people with like watermelon like hoods up, like little halos around them, which was very strange.
Yes. But we've got a little clip, as Henry says, you can go and listen to lots more audio about it in our Factory Floor Cuts, but just a little clip here so you know what we're talking about.
Gazillions! We are all Palestinians! Next we've got Natalie. Natalie has helped organise this beautiful event. She is going to speak about the Watermelon Theme March, and I'll hand it over to Nat.
Who's this geezer? Hi everyone!
Henry as well.
Fantastic.
Henry as well. Henry as well.
And Henry is here. Yeah, Henry's here too. Yeah. Hi everyone! Gibby, you all look fantastic. Show me your watermelons. Wave them up. As artists, we believe in creativity and culture and stories as a form of resistance. And we have 3 incredible storytellers who are here to tell us a story of why we're all carrying watermelons today. Where are my 3 little storytellers? Do you want to come up here?
One day, a group of artists gathered to share an exhibition of painting about their land. But the exhibition was shut down by officers. One of the artists said, "They told us that painting the flag was forbidden, but also the colours were forbidden." So one painter said to an officer, "What if I were to paint a flower in red, green, black and white?" To which the officer replied angrily, "It will be confiscated. Even if you paint a watermelon, it will be confiscated." Imagine confiscating a watermelon. So the watermelon became a symbol of Palestinian culture and resistance.
The chat train is pulling into Nat's provocation station.
So, for any new listeners, this is the part of the show where I like to provoke Henry. I bring some thoughts on my creative practice, relating it to the rest of the world, maybe something I've read recently or someone I've spoken to. And that's because I'm doing a PhD in practice-based research at York St John's University in theatre and environmental justice. And so this is a way of me kind of documenting my practice. And the main thing we've been doing recently is protesting about Palestine. And I'm just taken by the similarities between conversations that activists have when arranging a demo and the conversations that theatre makers and performers have, and the crossover between those two. Because, in case you haven't realised, a protest is a performance. And a performance, a lot of the time, can also be a protest. So I wanted to bring to you some of the conversations that have been happening. Unfortunately, these conversations are happening in a WhatsApp group, which is one of the worst ways of communicating. But I just thought it was so fascinating that I joined a demo organisers WhatsApp group with dozens and dozens of people that I don't know. I've probably been marching alongside them, but you don't necessarily get people's names. And in this is just after me and Henry have had the chat where we're like, what can we do? Where's some more like creative, performative ideas that we can do at these demos? And I made the suggestion that maybe we could have a kind of theatrical moment that we take up the space in the middle of one of the marches on Saturday, and we all agree that we're going to stop for a minute of silence. And with his fists in the air, people up on each other's shoulders, placards raised high, we're going to take up and block that street and freeze.
And you imagine that before this, it's been a cacophony of blasting noise and chants, and suddenly well,
everyone, it would happen it wouldn't happen suddenly because you've got 1,000 people, but you agree a time and a place and go, it's going to stop, and you've all got the word goes down the line. It would happen like whispers being passed down the line, and everyone stops. And then you continue. So this was my idea that I was proposing to the group, and it sparked what, I don't know, to other people it might not be interesting, but I thought it was really interesting. People commenting on the use of silence in protests. And we've got some of these ideas. Henry, do you want to kind of pick out a couple that you thought were interesting?
First thing that people would think is, well, a protest is meant to be noisy, it's meant to be loud, it's meant to be angry, and taking that away is almost like taking the fuel from the fire. It's asking people not to scream their hearts out, and people absolutely do. This is their space to...
Yes, and I completely agree with that. These Saturday demonstrations are like therapy. So the rest of the week, you feel so isolated, and it's sitting and watching undescribable horrors, and because of the way the internet works, you could see 3 of these undescribable horrors, and also like someone's cappuccino and their puppy, all before you've kind of got out of bed in the morning, which is not healthy. And so on a Saturday, yeah, that is your chance to scream your lungs out. My counter argument, of course, was to say I wasn't saying that there shouldn't be any noise. I was saying it's really powerful to turn the volume down suddenly for a short amount of time and then turn it back up again. And it creates a new story, which is what we're trying to do, is to get the press to report on this moment.
And then the anger is just like palpable again, because like suddenly the silence has then been replaced by
a cacophony,
a huge
especially
amount of
as
noise,
this. My suggestion was then after the minute's silence, we go into ceasefire now, and we've got a better chance of actually 1,000 people chanting it together, all one chant, rather than the different overlapping cacophony that you usually get. However, then another person said, equally, very good point. I'm not sort of challenging any of these because I think they're just interesting. Someone said, but I'm a steward on these protests, and we often get heckled, and sometimes these are just leery drunken people coming out of a pub going,
what's this about?
There's a bit of that, and sometimes they're deeply offensive and abusive, and so if we are silent, then you're giving power to, well, you're giving volume to the abuse.
I would say, like, again, thinking about this, the noise will return, and I think that like the power of that, it's almost like a boom of energy, a burst of energy. So yeah, you've got these ripples of if some idiot's going to do some shouting about it or whatever, like they will suddenly be faced with like the power of a united front in one go, which happens anyway. Like when people are listening to speeches and someone walks past and gives it a bit of, oh, mate, we all stop the speeches and we get the chants going against them.
And again, going back to the WhatsApp group, someone else made the point that if we're all standing in united silence, and then there is absolute dignity in that, the self-control to be able to stand still like that. I feel like it would be a mirror, like you're holding up a mirror to passers-by and saying, have you stopped to think about this for a minute?
So 1917, you said there was an example of a silent protest in America.
Yeah, so then during this conversation, I start Googling silent protests, of which, of course, there's a long woven history of using silence in protests. I should also mention that there is a silent protest that happens every week in Leeds, and they are called the Women in Black, and they stand, or wearing black, holding up their placards in silence. The Red Rebels from Extinction Rebellion perform in silence, and there's incredible images from Fifth Avenue, New York City, with hundreds of black people all wearing white walking in silence. So there is power in this, and it's all a theatrical performance, which I find very interesting. But all these conversations always come down to what artists talk about, which is efficacy and what impact do you want to have on your audience, and who are your audience? I've started doing a little bit of teaching at York St John and on a module that is about arts and activism, and they're reading this week is 2 articles, one by Sally Hickson in the University of Guelph in Canada, and another is by Ollie Mould at the University of London, the Royal Holloway, and they're also picking apart similar kind of questions, particularly the Just Stop Oil protests where they're throwing stuff at art, very valuable art, and they're asking similar questions. How effective is the messaging? Hickson makes the point that with these protests, the destroying of artwork, although they don't destroy them because they're often like limited damage is caused, they're grabbing the headline and they're trying to provoke people into an action. And maybe if you are outraged at the thought of an artwork being destroyed, then maybe you might want to be outraged by the thoughts of the tides rising and that piece of artwork being destroyed because we no longer live in a society that can sustain our way of life. That's what they're trying to do. But they bring up the point that, or critics bring up the point, if you have to explain it, then maybe you're not winning the battle. You're already lost because people don't stick around for the explanation. They're just going to see the headline, and you're not in control of what that headline is. and then they're going to react to that rage, which is these ridiculous people, how dare they do this? And on the other hand, I can also argue that what artist is in control of their audience's reaction. So you're still gonna do something. I don't know a single piece of theatre when the audience have unified, had one reaction, and then all left. Like, we agree that this is what the meaning of the piece was, and now we're leaving.
And yes, standing on a stage, I think I'm unmuddled in a lot of messaging that I say as an artist when I criticise. I've criticised austerity, or I've attacked racism or hostile environment policies, and now Palestine.
But I guess that's your messaging rather than what effect it's going to have on your audience member. So that's what we're talking about, is the impact on the audience member. They're saying we want people to ask themselves, if I'm really angry about Van Gogh's sunflowers, then maybe I should be angry about the climate crisis as well. That's the point in us doing this. And we're saying, well, people get angry, sure, but they're not doing that next step necessarily, or you're sort of leaving that up to them. That bit is what goes on in sort of the people who are already discussing and thinking about these things. And the chances are, if you're discussing and thinking about the meaning of art, then you might also be clued up on what is going on in the climate crisis. It's
a wider conceptual idea that I do think one of the criticisms in activism is that it's distracting from like oil companies, and there is, a long tradition of over 20 years of people targeting through climate camps in the 2000s, like actively targeting the offices, and that's happening at the moment. Palestine is actively targeting Teledyne and Elbit Systems and going to these workplaces and blocking roads and spraying red. So by taking it away from the headquarters and the banking systems and the corporate systems and putting it into art places, it's much more this wider concept, which I totally agree with, but maybe we should be pointing the finger much more directly, again talking about land, on the high streets or the behind the scenes or the corporate systems. It's about where is this stuff literally happening, literally the offices where, or the factories that they're producing these weapons, or producing these drills that are going to be fracking, etc.
Well, it's funny you should make that point, Henry, because Ollie Mould makes the point in his article that
he's been listening to this podcast.
Art is an extension of corporate power. First off, museums and art galleries have long been used by fossil fuel companies for the purposes of art washing. The ethical acceptability process of funding art and culture to smooth over their very unethical corporate practices. So he brings that up, but point. Again, there's a layer to which it's a very blunt tool, essentially. It's a blunt hammer for something that needs a little bit more chewing over.
And I will say that just in the last week, there have been sit-ins and protests at the Museum of Modern Arts in New York, and as well as the British Museum down in that London, where activists have been linking the fossil fuel industries that have been supporting these museums, sponsoring, and also have been part of the genocide happening in Palestine, and it's all linked together of massive corporations.
Absolutely, they're the same companies who are making money.
But I suppose that for that audience, then the people that are doing those protests feels like that is very much targeted at the administration and the powers that be, to say, we want you to stop sponsoring this, we want you to platform Palestinian artists, and we want you to boycott Israeli goods or Israeli artists or Israeli products. Now, I'd say that what Just Stop Oil have been doing with their throwing soup at paintings and that thing, that's not. I haven't read that as specifically about the museum saying we want you, the museum, to take more of a stance on climate. I might be wrong, I might have missed that, but that wasn't a demand on the space. That was, as I say, a conceptual thing that was trying to link these ideas of like, what is the use of art, or what do we put value in? And so I think that, again, when we talk about protest and messaging, it's like, what is the demand? What is the ask? So at the moment, it feels quite easy, and I think it might get more complicated in the future. But at the moment, it's a ceasefire. We just want just give us the ceasefire. Now, at some point, there will be another pause to the fighting, and then it gets cut because people go, oh, well, you got a ceasefire. And you're no. Okay, well then it's about the occupation.
What
it's
does a
about
ceasefire
justice.
mean?
Yes.
I mean, for goodness' sake,
It's the Labour front bench talk about a meaningful ceasefire at the moment, but they're not talking about justice within that ceasefire. Anyway, so I guess the point I'm saying is like, okay, well if that activism is a demand and it's also an artistic action, it's talking about art, then again it's what are you asking of doing it? And so if you're asking people to think conceptually, that sounds great, and we always want people to think conceptually in any, walk away from this podcast with ideas chewing in your brain, walk away from performances, but is that going to happen in a 30-second action? Which, I'm not dismissing. I think it is important. I do support it. I think it was a great visual thing, and it did capture the headlines, and it has sparked conversations. I suppose.
And actually, I've seen some great clips, although I'm sure they're not the majority, but activists and leaders of the climate justice movement being able to get on primetime telly because of this action, and then they get to say what people really need to know about the climate crisis. So that's their argument, is like, otherwise the BBC wouldn't be talking about the impact of the climate crisis, but because that person was able to get through the door and a producer could go, yeah, okay, we'll have that young person in, or they might not have been young, but then they get to have their 2 minutes of, someone threw some soup and isn't everyone outraged? Also, why aren't we talking about the climate crisis and the impact that it's going to have? And I guess maybe the same is also said for Palestine, and going, you cannot give us this normalizing of just quiet support, diplomatic cover for the genocide, for the siege, for the occupation. And that's what our leaders and all mainstream coverage is saying, that it's just allowed to continue week after week after week. You cannot say that the majority of people in this country agree with that and will just quietly go along with it. We will disrupt that narrative. And if we don't have the power, then we've got power in numbers. And that's why we need everyone out on the streets every Saturday.
Or if you do struggle to be physically there, like, just be shouting loud about it in your workplaces, in your schools, colleges, universities, in your friendship circles. Like, try and break the algorithm. Like, show up in your sphere that you can do.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to finish on a banger that is very unambiguous on the messaging.
If you like blunt songs battering you round the heads, then oh boy, please enjoy Nat's banger of the hour.
Because every single song you own is a banger.
It's time for Nat's banger of the hour.
Bangers.
Is it a banger?
This is my banger of the hour. The almighty rock gods that are prophets of rage, and this is Unfudge the World.
bitches and too many cooks in the kitchen. Exploding phones, killing drones on a mission. I'm elated to get y'all elevated. God remains God, yeah, and they hate it. All you need, people, pledge allegiance to the evil. Everything's changed, yet nothing's changed. Bold has changed, everything looking strange, yeah. Engineers got millennials living in fear. Give a damn, evil can't stand, yeah. When the people take a stand, come on, no hatred, fuck races, black faces, time changing, one nation, unification, the vibration, unfuck the world, no hatred, fuck races, black faces, time changing, one nation, unification, the vibration, unfuck the world. Unfuck the world.
I'm the straw that broke the camel's back, the gun in the car jack, the nightstick that keeps cracking down.